Hello and welcome to the Last Word on Spurs. We are your multi-award winning Tottenham Hotspur podcast, and we return for the big match preview ahead of Spurs facing Nottingham Forest at the City Ground, and of course that reunion with Nuno Espirito Santo. If you're listening for the very first time, you can find us on iTunes. We're on Spotify. We're across all major audio platforms. We're of course on X. We're on Instagram, we're on Facebook too, and Blue Sky, may I just add. We're joined by three fabulous returning guests to Last Word on Spurs who are here. Can I just say, for our listeners on audio, it is Christmas Eve. Happy Christmas Eve. For our watching audience, slightly different for you guys. You're 24 hours behind. But like I said, I think, look, for all of our own sake, mental health, we ain't going to be here on a Christmas Eve with Spurs the way they are right now. We need to look ahead to Forest. It's been a crazy, chaotic time, as you know, being a Spurs fan. I think it's fair to say that there's a lot of different opinions, a lot of contrasting views, I think it's fair to say, on all things Tottenham. And I will say at the very, very top of this show that I've said on the last few shows that I'm always personally as a host seeking for that right balance. And I think what I've always tried to do is in these difficult times is try and make the show as watchable and as listenable as possible. And I can appreciate that when we're going through the turbulent time that we're going through right now and different people have different views on where we are, that is always very hard to do. But that's how I will try and continue to strive and do on Last Word on Spurs and give you guys the show that hopefully you all deserve and what we look forward to. And because that's the end of it, we want to make it as enjoyable as we can. But I know many are probably in a situation where they're not enjoying Tottenham in general. So look, let's welcome in our wonderful panel here. Joining us, I've got the wonderful first up, George Achilles back on the show. My G, how are you? Love to be back on. You're smiling.
Oh, always smiling, but yeah, we've got a lot to divulge in this episode, I can't lie. But yeah, man, happy to be back talking Spurs as usual. So yeah, appreciate it.
Bless you, thank you so much. And also back on the panel, I've got to say, I've had three fresh faces from the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, although this again is 48 hours ago. So they've had a chance to recover and come back. Although you would think if you're watching us, one is actually inside the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. Talia Corran's back, Tal. Lovely to be back on Last Word on Spurs. Oh, that's the first someone smiling inside the stadium. What's going on?
I actually left at 60 whatever minutes once that goal went in. So I'm definitely not still in the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. And thank God I'm not, because I can't deal with that. But I'm very glad to be back. But thought this was more appropriate than the Christmas mess that's actually behind me. So hi. Cannot wait.
Hiding it with something Spurs. I tell you, these are where we are right now. Listen, Tal, thank you so much. Pleasure for being back on. Also back on the show, we've got Johnny Hammy joining us. Johnny, love to have you back on, my man. How are you? You well? Apart from all things Tottenham.
Right. I was a little upset that some Spurs fans started a Just Giving page to stop me coming home from Tenerife when they found out that I didn't go to neither the Man United game or the Southampton game when we managed to score 9 goals.
So you're the problem. So you're the problem.
You know, of course, I came home and straight into 6 being
more to come for sure. Like I say, we are, like I say, bringing up Nottingham Forest to come. For Spurs, it's an opportunity really in desperate need of a win on Boxing Day, where Spurs will come again face to face with Nuno Espirito Santo, who have, let's be honest, Forest had a really good season in the Premier League. And in light of what we will just say again, to come back on where we are with Spurs, in light of a real crippling defence injury crisis at the moment, Spurs at present in the Premier League do sit in 11th place. It's not where we want to be. It's 3 defeats in 4 to leave us there at the moment. George, I'll open with you if you don't mind. You are, George, always one of the most optimistic Spurs fans that I know. And we know this is quite a tough time at the moment. I think, look, we all would have to be sitting here talking about more happier times for the football club. And there is a real, I would say, to use that word, disparity with regards to where many find themselves right now in relation to the ownership, in regards to the manager, in regards to the players. Where are we, George, in your mind at the moment? Because, it's labelled a project. It's labelled, of course, saying that many need to get behind. We've had a number of managers that have come in and failed, been brought in as win now. We haven't maybe suddenly given them the win now tools. Where are we in your mind at the moment? And how do you feel as a Spurs fan?
Me personally, I said this to you guys beforehand, when Ange first came in, or sort of as we were on the hunt for that new manager, we all sort of understood at the time that whoever it was going to end up being, this was going to be a project, whether it was Arne Slot at the time we were linked to, Gallardo, Ange, whoever it may have been. I said that I would always give this manager 2 seasons minimum to see how things go, because at the end of the day, I just think the fact that we lost Harry Kane and it's a massive turnaround in what we're doing in terms of getting rid of certain players and bringing people in. I never thought this would be an easy fix. So in my mind, I was always willing to sort of give this man, and so be it this time around, 2 seasons, see how things go. But I can completely understand why people are fed up, because at the end of the day, we really, after in a way doing well last year in terms of getting a European spot. I mean, we held for a while. It's disappointing in terms of how the season ended, but I don't think at the beginning of the season anyone predicted us to be anywhere near top 4, especially losing Harry Kane. So to actually be there was somewhat of an achievement. But I think to now be sitting in 11th, is it, and with the amount of goals we conceded in the last 3 home games is obviously not. It's not great. I can completely understand people's disparity, but for me as a fan, I'm always willing to give Ange the time, as long as we don't start getting into some relegation scrap. But look, we're in all 4 competitions at the moment so far. For me personally, I don't want to see him go whilst that's happening, and we still got January where we need to try and do some bit of business. But I can completely understand why people have got massive concerns, because there are definitely a lot of things we aren't doing right now.
I'm lucky enough to be joined by 3 match-going fans. These are guys and girls that are on the terraces every other week. Some travel home and away. Johnny, bless you. Like I say, I mean, Tal, the one thing you've always been known for on the show is kind of being able to tell it as it is and still offer that perspective where things are in the midst of difficulty. And there's no doubt about it, we are going through a difficult period right now. That's probably been a lot of the story around Spurs for the last 5, 6, 7 years, right? Where are you in your mind at the moment as a Spurs fan with regards to what you're watching, what you're seeing, and just that, as I mentioned, that word disparity amongst the differences in terms of the ownership, the head coach, the players as well? I think, again, I'll make this point. I don't think it's all on one specific issue. It's a multitude of different factors that have accumulated over a sense of time. And here we are right now, pretty much trying to solve all these different pieces in the puzzle.
Yeah. I mean, I'm tired and I'm sad. Like, I think they're 2 words that I feel quite strongly about. I mean, I'm tired because going to games is draining. Like, I'm spending the best part of $2,000 to go and watch an unserious team for the most part. And that is really frustrating to watch, because we can't win or lose in a normal manner. Like, no matter what we've gone to see, it's basically a heart attack waiting to happen. Nothing's easy. I mean, other than Southampton in recent times, like, nothing's been simple for us. Everything you come away from being like, oh my God, why did we do that to ourselves? Why do we make things so much harder than they need to? Or why aren't we doing X, Y, or Z right? Of course, context is everything. We are in a huge injury crisis, and we don't have our keeper and our back line and stuff. And they're all completely true. But I think just the actual problems that we're seeing is just a repeated pattern that we've seen time and time again. And it just feels like it's exacerbated at the moment. It's getting worse. And I think what I'm struggling with is, it's not so much just Ange, Levy, debate, let's split the fan base. It's more just like, without the ball, we've been awful. There's so many gaps in everything we're doing. We're not putting enough pressure on people. We're just leisurely strolling around half the time. And I'm like, what are these guys doing? And then, it's mental for Ange not to tweak those tactics based on our opponent, because I think as fans, we all know what's going to happen. I don't think hardly anybody in that ground or at home watching thought, do you know what? We've really got a great chance of winning today. Of course, there's hope, and you like to think we can show up against anyone, as we did at the Etihad. I know City are in a funk, but we can turn up on our day. We're so chaotic, we could beat anyone. So there's always that chance, but I don't think most people would have gone in super confident, and I didn't at all. And Liverpool are fantastic. They are a well-drilled team that just, you watch them and they know where they're running and they're doing all of these things. And our guys are just, let's kick this ball and hope someone gets it on the other end, and let's do these things. And I think that's what's frustrating, because you can do better than that. And it shouldn't matter what players are on that pitch, what managers in that dugout. These are professional footballers and professional managers, and they have to do better than that, because they're in a stadium of paying fans, and we've let 6 goals in at home. And that's embarrassing. And even when Liverpool are playing your Palaces and Ipswiches and whoever else, they're only scoring 2 or 3, and they've scored 6 against us. And that's not acceptable. And that's what's sad. It's just like, how are we there? And you've got, I'm not ashamed to say it, but I left at that time because I'm like, right, 5's enough. No way, pal. Let alone other people.
I know you, Tal. Can I just say, I've known you for the last 7, 8 years, back on the audio days. I know it's not like you to ever leave a Spurs game early unless you need to. So things must be pretty low for you now and your self-esteem to want to leave Spurs that early.
Yeah, it's embarrassing. You're sitting there and you're opposite these away fans cheering. And I tell you what, the stadium yesterday was infiltrated with Liverpool fans. It was the most horrendous thing I've ever seen. I had stewards everywhere. It was a really bad day yesterday. But like the whole thing was just awful. And you just think, what are you staying for? Like, why am I going to stay and watch them potentially score again? And with everyone, you know, having their Levy out balloons and cheering the whole time and doing whatever else, you're like, what good am I sitting here being like, yeah, this is great? Because it's fucking not. It's awful. So I was like, no, I'm out of there. So that's great. And like, all right, yeah, I missed a couple of goals, but no, not for me that. But I just think overall, I just feel quite sad because I think I've been on this show, 7, 8 years, a long old time now. And how many times have we been in this situation where we're talking about the divide between the fan base, or is the manager the right manager for us, and all these things? We're just repeatedly having the same conversation at a different point, and we're not getting anywhere. You know, like Georgia said, now we sack him now, what's going to happen next? Nothing. We're just going to repeat the cycle and start. There's so many elements that we need to do, and I think everyone's bored of having this conversation already, right? We don't need to be like, everything's going on, so let's see. But there is stuff that we need to change. We need to, you know, do a lot better, but let's get into it. I don't want to overreact or be reactive, but to everyone watching it was yesterday, so it's still pretty fresh for us.
Yeah. I think what's also key on this point, Sal, you make it there, and I'll bring Jay into the show. Look, Jay, love to have you back on. Lots of love for you in our commentary of comments here. Look, we can't get away from the fact, again, I'm always, like I say, seeking that balance to this show. Spurs went in with that team with a makeshift defence with that Liverpool game, packed with a contained 18-year-old midfielder. You had a right back playing at left back and only his second Premier League start in Jed Spence. You had a 22-year-old with only 12 Premier League starts to his name. You then had like an overloaded right back really running on empty, and a goalkeeper in Fraser Forster, who we know at the time was only playing his 5th Premier League game in 18 months. There's lots of different elements as to why you could argue we are not seeing a fluid, cohesive Tottenham team that are out there. But where are you at the moment, Jay? Look, we'll come on to Ange in like a little bit, but in terms of what you're seeing pitch-wise with Spurs at the moment, I think we all, let's be honest about it, as true Spurs fans that have watched this team week in, week out, we knew Liverpool would be tough. I think we all maybe looked at that game and thought it might have been a bit of a free hit to go and get a result because we know how good Liverpool are. This is a side that only lost once all season. But at the same time, I think what the difficulty is, and I said this in the game that we covered it's sometimes the manner of the loss and the frequency of goals we're conceding and how we are conceding those goals. And I take again into account 100%, we have got a multitude of injuries. We are really finding it hard to field what you would call a balanced side. But in terms of, before we come on to the manager and all of that surrounding it, in terms of what you're seeing on the pitch, Johnny, is it reflective of the team and the squad that we've got to pick at the moment?
Making the mistake once is understandable. Making the same mistake twice is foolhardy. You know, making it 3, 4, 5 times is just insane. And I don't understand it. What I would say is, you know, I hear so many people talking about the injury crisis, and rightly so. But let me take you back to Chelsea last year when we went on this amazing run of 10 games without a loss. And then we had the Chelsea game where it all fell apart and we had our injuries and we had sending offs and our form dipped. And all the fans would talk about was wait until we get our players back. Wait until, and then we'll show everyone who we really are. And we hit 2024 and I'll wait for it to happen. It hasn't happened. This isn't a little blip. This has been carried on. You know, we've conceded the first goal 14 times at home this season. No team has ever done that in the history of the Premier League. Okay, let that sink in. We are record breakers. We are breaking records. But unfortunately, they're all the wrong records. They're not the records that are the envy of the league. And, you know, when you hear someone like Sabotsai talking yesterday about, you know, they knew how Spurs were going to play. They knew what they were going to target. There was no surprises. And as Talia said before, you know, there is no, something has to change. I'm looking for Ange to sprinkle some pragmatism on this team, and it's not happening. And, you can stand there and defend it to your blue in the face. But, if you can't see what I'm seeing as a long-standing football fan, then I don't know. I really don't know. And as I said to you backstage, we talk about projects and we look at Iriola at Bournemouth. They train in a park. They get changed in a porter cabin. They play in an 11,000-seater stadium. He's been there the same amount of time as Ange. And they've got a better team. And they haven't spent the money. And they got rid of Solanke. And I look at what he's doing there. I see his involvement in the side of the pitch. I see when things are going wrong, how he interacts and tries to change it. I don't see that. Look, I don't want to sit here and say, I hate Ange, because as a human and as a person, and some of the things he says, I like it. But as a football man, just like I look at Daniel Levy off the pitch, genius, on the pitch is a disaster. And I look at what Ange is doing. Some of the things he says is great, but how he reacts on the pitch or doesn't react on the pitch to certain situations is beyond baffling. I look at Sonny on the weekend. I was amazed that he was still on as late as he was in that game. There are other players who seem to be getting a pass. I just think that, I look at Slot and that balance in his team where he's taken Klopp's Gegenpress, manic football style, and what he's done, he's put pragmatism inside that team. But they were hungry for that ball. They were hungry for that ball. Every time they lost the ball, they were hunting in packs. It reminded me a bit of Barcelona's Pep's Barcelona back in the day, where they used to hunt for packs. They controlled the ball. And if they lost it, they were there to fight and win it back again. And I didn't see that yesterday. And when I came out, it's funny, Talia, you left at 61 minutes. I got abused for leaving at 6-3 on the 87th minute, right? By some, I see you left in the 87th minute. It's a disgrace. It's fans like you that are bringing the club down. Yeah, okay.
It's like full time whenever I left, whatever minute it was like full time. All the stewards were like, oh God, we've got to put all the barriers up. They weren't prepared for it.
No, as people were leaving. But as you say, unfortunately, the atmosphere was terrible yesterday. I think I was more excited about the Squid Games and hoping I was going to be eliminated before any more goals went in. But there was so many Liverpool fans in the South Stand. I couldn't understand quite what was going on, really, and that's what what really is killing the atmosphere overall. But look, going back to what we're experiencing now, I don't think any other manager that I can remember in a long time would have still been given the, the allowance that he's getting right now for some of these performances. And he stated, I'm not going to change. I'm not going to change. And some of these defeats, sorry, Ricky, I'll just finish it. Some of these defeats have been with our strongest team.
Yeah. I mean, look, you can't get away from that. I'm going to bring in Ange comments shortly, but what I do want to do, George, is to steer it over to you for a second, and we're going to come back round on the points Jay's making there with regards to Ange Postecoglou. There is a narrative that is around Spurs in general, whoever the manager has been, George, is that everybody wants results, but nobody's actually willing to go through the pains in the stomach of a rebuild to get there. Now, there's a lot of different variations about how you take a comment like that, because there's an argument to say, do you just simply stick with a manager to really give it that time? And even if you're seeing some bad traits, do you hope that it's going to get better in time? I think we're just over 15, 16 months into this project of Ange Postecoglou. And again, I know there's a lot of stats out there that's definitely drive a narrative that things aren't looking great from a stats perspective. There is, again, just to bring that balance into the show, as I've tried to always do, he is going through a multitude of injuries right now. I think, Jay, you might say that they're self-inflicted by the way Spurs do train. At times, that is at game intensity. But is it a case that, George, and I have made this clear on previous shows, that I'll say this right from where I am at the moment, just hosting the show, as much as I've got some real concern about Ange Postecoglou, our results and form right now, I don't really see any benefit in sacking him at this moment in time, because Spurs will not go out there and be able to attract a manager or somebody of a class that would be able to take them up a level mid-season. And then what you're really looking at is Ryan Mason in control for the rest of the season. I'm going to be honest and say this, that look, I think Ryan's a Tottenham man. I know he cares about the football club. I don't think Ryan Mason will get anything more out of this squad than what Ange Postecoglou will. So I think just to try and get some balance on this point, we know we've got players that are obviously suffering from injuries at the moment. We've got players that are leggy. I think you look at Pedro Porro, for example, he's played far more minutes than any other player in the team. 1,888 to his name. Kulusevski next at 1,784. Then Solanke at 1,747. It's what's killing us more than anything now, George, the nature of not being able to give the current players that are available a rest. And also, in addition to that, the players that obviously aren't available for selection right now. Or is it deeper than that, George, in your opinion?
I mean, to be honest, like having the same team having to play 3 times in 1 week is going to be a killer. Like I walked into that Liverpool game and I said the exact same. As soon as I saw the lineup, and he had no choice but to put it out. As soon as I saw it, I was like, well, this is going to be a struggle, because the exact same 11 played 2 days prior or 3 days prior. So you knew from the get-go they weren't going to have any energy, which was the problem that Talia was saying before, or Anjoni as well. Like we didn't want the ball. Liverpool did. They wanted everything. Yeah. And for me, it's like I agree with your point about the whole sacking him, and there's absolutely no one out there, in my opinion, that we can actually get right now that is going to make any sort of improvement onto our situation than we are right now. With the amount of people missing,
not for free,
or and to be honest, when you talk about the likes of Iraola, who is a great manager, let's be real, right now, is it attractive for him to leave Bournemouth to go to Spurs mid-season? I don't think it is for him. So that's not really going to be possible. And I guess you could also make the argument, if we want to be a big club and not like a big club, then we can just spend the money to get him. But
is free, George. Sam Allardyce is free.
We're not fighting relegation yet. We don't need him just yet.
He's waiting for the call.
When we're 18th, then bring him in.
I can't work out if Jake's serious or not. We'll find out in a minute. Go on, Jake.
For me, what I find a little bit frustrating is that there have been very few moments this season where Ange actually has tweaked things mid-game and it worked. The one that springs to mind was West Ham. West Ham at home, when things were going against us, he saw that the midfield were struggling completely, and he brought Sarr on at half-time. That was probably the most proactive I had seen Ange all season in terms of making a change. And for me, I wanted to see more like that. I feel like a lot of the changes he makes are always reactive, or it's just too late. Like he has an idea and he doesn't. When the game state is changing, he doesn't react to it quick enough. It ends up being that the other team scores before we end up bringing the 3 subs on. So where I want him to do better is I want him to react a lot quicker, or even be a bit more proactive in seeing how the game's going throughout the match to really change things. Same like we we're just saying that Slot does. Slot sees how a game's going, like the Ipswich match, and changes things accordingly, which I don't think we do enough of. But I do think that when the style works and when we have some of the right players available, we blow teams away. That Liverpool game was the first game all season we'd lost by more than 1 goal. Now, of course, there's still loads of things about the fact that we shouldn't be losing to Ipswich at home and things like that. I totally understand that. But yeah, I just don't see how changing him mid-season, especially with January coming up anyway, not that we'd necessarily do too much because not many teams do in January, but it just doesn't seem to really make too much sense in my opinion.
Can I just ask you, George, just quickly,
sure.
What you were saying there about reacting, for me, Son just looked dead.
No, I agree. I thought we should have come a lot earlier in that game.
I'm thinking to myself, how do you subdue that side of Liverpool's attack? Bring on Timo. Right now, I'm not saying that Timo is a world-class player. What I'm saying is, right, please don't ever think that. I think that. But what I'm saying to you is that he has pace, and pace hurts, and it gives Liverpool something to think about. I don't remember Sonny beating his man once, and it might have stopped them coming down that flank over and over and over again. And like you said, George, it's that tactical nous that I don't feel You know, he said it. I think you mentioned it, Talia. This thing where you go into every game not concerned about the opposition. You play the same way, regardless of the opposition, regardless of the fact that you have injured players. I'm not going to change. I don't understand that. You know, if I'm doing my kids' football on a Sunday, and little Jimmy, my number one striker or number one centre back, whoever he may be, hasn't turned up, I'm jiggling things around, thinking, "Oh my God, like, you know, what can I do to change this to still give us some solidity?" But he doesn't care. He will play the same. He said against Chelsea, even if he had 8 players on the pitch, he would play exactly the same. And that's what I find worrying, guys.
I know, because we could have gone in at half time with a perfectly reasonable scoreline and been like, right, lads, we were overrun in all these areas, X, Y, Z. Let's make this a game. Let's do this. And he didn't do that. And the manner in which we conceded the rest and how quickly we went from a reasonable scoreline where we could have made a comeback to getting absolutely battered is not acceptable. And that's the difference.
No, I agree. But I think also as well, it seems to be a lot of the times when there is a loss with Spurs, the easiest thing to do is just to simply say that everything that happened was Ange's fault. Now, whilst I agree, there's definitely a lot of things in game that, in my opinion, he doesn't do right. Like I said, in terms of making the substitutions at the right time, being a bit more proactive in adapting to how things are going, like when he brought Son against West Ham. If you go back and look at the individual goals and the way we conceded them on against Liverpool, how is Basuma not checking his shoulder to see where McAllister, a 5'5" midfielder, pretty much in the box, not checking his shoulder to see what run he's making? Why is Forster then losing the strength and the ability to get the ball ahead of McAllister reaching for it? Why is Diaz unmarked at the back post? This sort of stuff that's happening isn't directly to do with the style of play, because people were set up in their positions. We're seeing so many individual mistakes as well as tactical mistakes every week, that I feel like as soon as the loss happens, those individual mistakes just get completely swept away, and it's just completely on Ange. Whereas the reality is we have lost 10 first-team players, and as much as I maybe have thought that the squad was better than it originally was, there clearly is a level drop to what we're seeing when we're having to play 36-year-old Forster, 18-year-old defensive mid, right back, centre back, and left back, and then Dragusin, who's also 22, who I've been actually quite disappointed with this season. But it's not just one thing. And I don't think changing Ange changes any of the other things, because if a new manager comes in and you've still got the same 10 players that are covering them, still making the individual mistakes, like Basuma, for example, who, for me personally, I think he has moments of brilliance where if he's 1v1 with a player, he's tussling with a player, more often than not, he wins the duel. He's very good at that. Where he's been really poor this season is he's misplaced a lot of passes. And when he's your defensive midfielder, that causes a lot of problems.
And that is his job.
Because then we get caught on transition a lot of the times. And that is in general how we conceded one against Liverpool as well. We misplaced a pass down the middle. Gravenberch ran through the whole of the team centrally because Basuma wasn't there anymore. And then we concede a goal 3-on-2. So I think it's a mix. I think in that situation, definitely on Ange, because in no way there should be a situation where I think it was Salah, Gakpo, and Szoboszlai were 3-on-2 with Dragusin and Archie Gray. That situation cannot happen. So that's on Ange as well. But then equally, we were so heavily going forward, and it was a very, very simple pass to make as well. It was about 7 yards away, and we misplaced it. There's so many individual errors that are happening in this team as well when we've got players out, which is why I think I can't ever be at this very present moment Ange out, because it's not totally on him at all. We're being let down by a lot of the players as well.
I'm asking a favour, Jan. I'm going to come to you in a second, I promise you, because we're going to bring in Andrew's comments. I just want to go to Tal very quickly. Then we're going to hear from Andrew and go back round to Jay.
Do you think it's balloons, though? George, just quickly, right? If you were on 5 balloons a day, wouldn't your brain be amiss when the ball came over? I mean, he obviously he's still got some hanging over red mist from all those balloons, because something's not right with his head. Sorry, Tal, go on.
I think on this point, Tal, to bring you in, I think the key is that what many will look at is the fact that is by bringing in ready-made players in January going to instantly improve the upturn in results. You know, as we are going to presently be recording, we know it's 6 days away from that transfer window opening. Do you look at what you're seeing now, Tal, to think this is going to be rectifiable with internally players coming back and players coming in, can you see, in your opinion, a genuine uplift when Johnny says there, when you look back at last season, for example, when we did get the players back in the second half of last season, we didn't really see an upturn in results. Do you see enough to be showing you, Tal, that when players come back internally and externally, if we buy some ready-made players in, can you see an uplift in terms of that progression for you?
I think we might do better, but it's not going to fix the problems that we're seeing. We might not be conceding as many goals as we're conceding at present because we're going to have our first choice keeper and our defence back, but that's not going to solve all the problems that we're seeing. And doesn't want to change. Having those players back is not going to make that change happen. So no, basically that's the way that I feel. Like in general, I'm pretty torn. Like I want to like him, but handball is handball. And with the players that we have, it's just not going to work out. We've been found out and we're too easy to play against and we're constantly exposed. And that is so easy for other teams to play against that it's just so frustrating to watch. Every game is chaotic in some way or another. And that itself causes mistakes, let alone the players that are fatigued and everything else and individual errors. Like all of these things, they just all accumulate into this thing that we're seeing. And where he's really, really hit home on how he doesn't want to change and this is his philosophy and this is everything, it's like, where does that actually leave us? Because with the owners that we've got, we're not going to go out and buy a whole new squad of players that are able to suit his system and just come in and make everything, change and be fantastic. So, we're kind of in a bit of a rut. Yes, some of our players aren't good enough. Some of them are tired, all of these things. But I don't particularly think Ange's, like as George was saying, he's not being super reactive. He's not using his subs where he can sometimes. He's also not rotated that much, even with the chance. Not that I thought he should, but he hasn't really done that. And yes, those reasons are pretty obvious to us. But I just think if he's not willing to tweak the tactics, then we're kind of writing our own fate. And we're a bit stuck in the mud anyway. But I think as a fan base, we have to look at ourselves too. Like we sit here week in, week out, we criticize players, managers, owners, all of these things. It's bigger than that. It's bigger than all of it. Like we sit here, we're always complaining about Sunning. This week we've conceded, we've both been to the stadium a few days. 16 goals we've seen in the last few days. That's nuts. That's absolutely insane to score, concede, whatever. There's so much going on, but I just think Ange is one piece of this puzzle. It's not the answer.
Yeah.
We sack him tomorrow, of course. Like I said, there's patterns to this squad. Same players, different managers, whatever, whoever they are. We are seeing the same things happen over and over again. So there's deeper rooted problems that is bigger than Ange. I just think the way that Ange is approaching some of the things that he can control is irresponsible and causing some of these problems. But in general, there's so much to worry about. And I do think this is a lot smaller a piece than we're kind of making out. And look, as always, everything's reactive. You see this thing and you're like, oh my God, this has happened, and it's the talk of the week. But next week, it'll be something different. This one will be some rumor in the transfer and it'll be like, oh, this isn't right or anything. There's always something to complain about. So I don't want to fully set in on that one element because I do think it's more than that. I just think there's so many elements at the moment that are frustrating as a fan. And here's the talk because I think he could do things better. But it's not just on him. There's a multitude of factors.
Let's hear from Ange Postecoglou. When we come back, we're going to go around to Johnny and really drum home with the fact of how important this Nottingham Forest game is for Spurs, of course. This coming Thursday, Boxing Day for Tottenham, a massive, massive game in the context of our season. We now need to pick up results. Let's hear on the back of Ange Postecoglou's presser where we are right now under his tenureship.
Well, it was a difficult day for us, obviously, and a painful result. Credit to Liverpool. I thought, they're a very good side. Obviously, they're in a great moment, very settled and in great form with great belief. And it was just a kind of bridge too far for us today in terms of, you could tell we were lacking a little bit of energy and sort of, the ability to really, compete with them at the same level.
You kind of said that you want to play your football no matter what this season. Was this just an example of maybe, in the long term you'll benefit from this, but today it was a bit, you kind of picked apart a little bit because of the openness?
Look, I think I've been really, really patient the last 18 months, sitting up here answering the same questions over and over again. If people want me to change my approach, it's not going to change. Like, we're doing it for a reason. We're doing it because we think it'll help us be successful. If people don't understand the circumstances we're in at the moment and the challenges we have from a team and squad perspective, which are as obvious as you want to make them, now, you know, I get the idea that people think, that I should just flick the switch and change, and somehow that would miraculously make us a different team. But it is what it is. I'm just going to continue staying focused on trying to build this team to be the team we want, and in the interim, we're going to have to accept that there are going to be challenges along the way. Yeah, fair bit. Fair bit, considering fair bit. I'll just leave it at that. Go on. Yep, they're good side, top side.
I know you mentioned about the level, and I know you've got a lot of injuries at the moment. I was wondering, how far away do you think this is when you're at full strength from the level you saw from the
Don't know, because we haven't had that. You know, we're still growing as a team. We're 18 months into trying to build a new team with a new way of playing, and it's fair to say we've had some challenges along the way, considering the availability, particularly at the moment. So that kind of, it's very hard to sort of see where we're at. But what I will say is that the players and are not wavering in their sort of commitment to what we're trying to do. And I think even today, in a difficult day, really proud of the fact that they still tried to play a certain way, knowing that that's our way forward.
Well, there you go. That was Ange Postecoglou on the back of that presser after the Liverpool game. Jam, I'm going to open up with you. Look, I think many understand just how crucial that Nottingham Forest game has now become in Tottenham's season. Just for context of where we are, Spurs come into that game in a much more modest position as they sit 11th in the league table, 23 points after 17 games. Look, obviously that defeat to Liverpool was our 8th defeat of the Premier League season. We didn't lose 8 in the Premier League until April of last season. We've lost 20 Premier League games out of the last 42. As you touched upon earlier, Johnny, we have conceded the opening goal in 14 different home games in the Premier League of 2024, the joint most ever by a team in a calendar year. And again, when you're looking at the fact of where we are around the Christmas period, it'll be worrying for those out there. This is our lowest position, I think, for Christmas period, if you've got to go back since 2009, which is crazy to say that. For those that are watching the show live, we've got a graphic that shows you just, Spurs' form over the Christmas period. And again, for context of that, you go back to Harry Redknapp, we were in 5th position. You go along that table, I think the lowest was Antonio Conte, where we sat 7th when I think it was his initial period of coming in. And then you're looking at Ange in 2024, and we're sitting there in 11th. So, look, it's fair to say this Nottingham Forest game is absolutely huge for Tottenham in the context of the season. Do you think, Johnny, from when you watch him, from when you see him, do you think he's actually feeling the pressure of this job? I think, it's quite obvious to many out there, especially with the interview he gave to BBC. He was quite spiky. The key is, can he get enough out of these players in these next few weeks to really ride out the storm that, as you know, I think you are one of many fans that feel he maybe isn't up to the job right now. What's your gut feeling about how big Forest is for him as the Tottenham head coach?
What I find a little bit surprising is, he doesn't take coaching. The coaching is done by Montgomery and the crew, okay? Which is kind of weird, because normally you look at Poch, everywhere Poch goes, he takes his crew with him. All the top managers, they have an ensemble of people that they trust. So when he says, right, I'm going to leave you to do the training and I'm going to go and do my thing, they understand how I operate. That's great when we've worked with people for many, many years. He brings in these people. I mean, you're talking about 2 guys who got sacked by Hibernian. They must be pinching themselves now that they're on that training pitch, training Spurs, training this team, while Ange is observing. I find that really, really strange. I'm sorry. I really do, because I think you build a team I don't do it like that. You know, I believe in bringing in youth and, you know, training them up and let them go on to bigger and better things. Well, as far as I can see, top people have top managers have a top team around them. It's about a team, whether it be medical staff. When you look at Conte, you know, with his set piece coach, who Ange didn't want. I think there's lots of components that go to make it, but he looks depressed. I mean, as I said to you backstage, you know, maybe that someone should get him a sponsorship for flash floor cleaning, because he spends most of the time looking at the floor, or playing pocket billiards, one of the two, on the sideline. I just feel that I love elements of Ange Ball. You know, I'll say it. You know, we've scored more counter-attacking goals this season than we did since Pochettino in 2019. It's fantastic. Some of the transition plays, fantastic. What I'm asking for is to sprinkle some pragmatism. There's nothing wrong with saying, you know what? Okay, I'm going to take 90% of Ange Ball and I'm going to add 10% of pragmatism.
Or just a bit of balance.
Yin and yang, right? That's what Slot has done with Klopp's manic Gegenpress, you know? And you look at Arsenal in 2024, they've lost 3 games. Arsenal have lost 4. Chelsea, who we thought were in disarray and absolutely falling apart, have lost 5. We have lost 15 games in 2024. 15. Just think about that. You know, people think that this problem is just a blip because of the injuries. This isn't a new thing, you know. And like you say, I'm in agreement with you. How do you sack him when you've got no one else to come in? But for at what stage do you look at this and say, you know what? I understand we don't really want to sack him. We don't want to go through another project, but it's not working. And when I gave you an example there of Iriola, who's been at the club 18 months, and I look at what he's done or doing, and I can see the change. I mean, I mentioned to you before about Nuno. When Nuno came to Spurs, he wasn't allowed to have his assistant coach.
Yep.
Levy said, no, we've got our own. We've got a couple of guys. We got Ryan Mason. He will help you out. He wanted Pedro Silva. He wasn't allowed to have him. And he's gone to Forest. And lo and behold, Pedro Silva's gone there. He's number 2. And look what they're doing. Because it's about a team.
I was about to say, Jane, to let you come back on this point, also to add to this, they've also bought players that actually are fitting into a system that Nuno wants to play, which obviously is a massive help to him, because, you know, many looked at Forest's recruitment, you know, in the last 18 months. And again, the narrative was it's a scattergun approach. But if you actually look at the way Forest play now, they've got a very structural team to come on to in how they set up, how they play. And Nuno is getting results from the players that have been brought in that are specific to his system, right?
But they're young. Listen, look, they're very good in defensive transition, right? I really like a lot of the players there. Murillo, Aino. I could go on. We'll go on and talk about them. But, you know, like everyone said, it was a scattergun buying approach. They said the same about Chelsea. And look where the two teams are now. You know, they were both accused of doing exactly the same thing. You know, buying every Tom, Dick and Harry. They're buying this one, they're buying that one. And now it doesn't look so stupid. You know, and don't get me started, you know, look, listen, Fabio and Gabonini were the golden double, the double act, the golden double act. And, you know, what they did and the manner in which they turned this club around, bringing in Bentancur and Kulu and Destiny and Vicario. And, you know, I don't need to name them all, Romero. And then, you know, we've got Lang has come in and he's got a different way of doing things. And it's not really, but these are Ange players, you know, I find it very difficult to accept that he hasn't been backed in any shape, way or form when, you know, he analysed the players he didn't want. Most of those have been cleared out. It was a big clear out we had last season of all the players that he didn't rate. Some have gone out on loan. And he's brought in quite a few players. And these players that have been brought in have been specific to his style of play. whether it be a fast defender or wingers. I mean, I think I've lost count how many wingers we got. We got more wingers than Nando's. I've lost count how many we've got. I mean, half of them are injured, but he has been backed. I think
the key thing is, Tal, to bring you in. The reality is, as we know, he is going to need definitely support in that January window that we touched upon. But I mean, on this point, Tal, when you look at the Forest game for you, how big is that, Tal, in the conjunction of what games we've got to come? Because, we've got, games coming up, FA Cup, we've got that double header in the League Cup as well with Liverpool. I think it's fair to say that we need to find some momentum, right? I just wonder for you, when you look at Forest as a game itself, how important do you think that is to start picking up results quickly? And do you look at Forest as a winnable game, Tal, given their form at the moment under Nuno himself?
I mean, it has to be a winnable game. Like, you have to view it as that. Every game you have to class as that. Will we win is a different situation. That's a different storyline. But, Forest are doing incredibly well. This is not the same Forest that we've seen before. If you would have said last season, any other season, you'd been like, is Forest a winnable game? You'd have been like, obviously, that is one of the games that you should be getting 6 points out of in a season. But this year, they're doing phenomenal and they're scoring goals for fun. And, Nuno's doing an incredible job there and they're great. But that shouldn't mean that we have to go there and be like, oh, they're not one of the big boys. They might be sitting in that position right now, but that's not who they are. And we should be able to go take the game to them and win. Like we said, will we do that? I don't know. They are a very smart team. They will know how to expose us as everybody else does. And it will be a really difficult game, especially with the form that they're in and the form that we're in. It will be tricky. But as a group of players who have just got pumped at home on Boxing Day, where they know they're going to, you've got everyone around their TVs watching or there or whatever else. If they cannot put a performance together, that's it. Like, the stadium is already negative. There is toxic behaviours. There's everything in there. The longer that goes on, the more difficult it becomes to be a fan in that stadium and at home. But it's just, we have to turn it around and build that momentum. We have to do it as soon as possible, because no matter what's next for a manager, a player, a owner, whoever it is, we cannot continue on this trajectory. It is painful to do. And we shouldn't be giving so much grace to these opposition teams to think, is this a winnable game? Like, that shouldn't even be a question. We should be like, we're this top 6 team. We're doing this thing. We are great football, whatever it is. We have to beat them. We have to have that mentality and we have to do it, whatever that game is in front of us. And I think Forest is huge. It has to be. It doesn't matter what it is. It's like, look, if we're being honest, the league does not look great for us right now. And we are in these cup competitions where we do have a chance. And that's a whole different storyline. So let's talk about that at a different time. But for where we are, we've still got a ton of league games to play. And we have to turn this around as soon as possible, especially where you've got some of your big boys like your Man Cities and stuff struggling. That has to be an opportunity to come back and pounce on that, because other teams will if we don't. And that will just mean our position will fall and fall and fall. And we can't have that happen. So we have to do it as soon as possible. But we know they're a threat. I mean, I've had Chris Wood in my fantasy team for a long time. He's doing very well. So, that's about as good as my Forest knowledge goes. I will not pretend that I sit and watch their games. I don't. I just get excited when he scores because I get points. But, we've got to go give them a game and get a hold of them as quickly as possible. And none of this, let's concede first. Let's play this way. Let's play that way. They'll be on us like a rush from the second that whistle goes. We are not on it, we will lose the game. It's that simple. We have to show up. We have to do everything in our power to win that game. Otherwise, like I said, I really think it will be the continuation, if not the progression, of a dangerous, dangerous atmosphere as part of this club.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with the word you're saying there, Tal. That we are receiving news coming into us that Postecoglou retains the full support from the key members of the Tottenham Hotspur board, even with Spurs entering the festive period in the bottom half of the table. I mean, George, to come over to you, when you look at Spurs and Forest in conjunction with that Premier League table, Spurs, they're 8 points off Nottingham Forest at this present moment in time. We are obviously only 17 games in. I mean, dare I say, could we afford to lose this one, George, in terms of the context of the game for you? Is it a must-win game? Is it a must-not-lose game? I mean, when you look at our form at the moment, with 3 wins in the last 11 and 3 defeats in the last 4 games, what do you view the context of the game being for you, given, as Talia said there, I think very succinctly how good Forest have been this season and the current run of form they are under Nuno Espirito Santo.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I don't think it matters really how good they've been this season. I think it is a must-win game for us, and I think Tao hit the nail on the head there, where these are the sort of games we should have been going into just thinking, right, we have this is ours to win. We've got to win this game and get us up into that sort of top 4 position. So, yeah, I think this is a game we do need to win to start building momentum, like Tao was saying, going into January, whether that's adding players in as well and sort of getting a bit more uplift from the team. I just worry that we just cannot seem to handle this schedule at the moment for one way or another. Whether that's the fact that we've played Thursday, Sunday for the whole month, and wonder why inconsistent results when we haven't got the squad there to do it, as well as some of Ange's tactics not aligning with how the opposition are playing. I think we seem to be really struggling right now with it. So no, I think Forest is a really important game for us. I think we have to win this game to sort of get the momentum going into January and sort of see ourselves get further up the table.
Yeah, I mean, and you look at Forest's form in general. I mean, they've had, let's be honest about it, they're flying. They've beaten Man United, Aston Villa and Brentford in back-to-back games. Their confidence can't really be any higher at the moment. And Spurs, I mean, they have got the return of Rodrigo Bentancur, Johnny, which maybe will give them a boost. I can't help but saying this. I thought Bentancur would end up being a lot more fresher and fitter for the European games, which when I look at the game against Rangers now, a couple of games ago, I mean, look, we have to always say this. I think, to be honest, that game there, I mean, nobody really had a great game. Bentancur wasn't great in the midfield. Do you feel with his reintroduction to the team, we're going to get a performance, or are you concerned that it will take maybe a few games Premier League-wise to get back that intensity of that level? We've got games coming thick and fast at the moment. Where do you view that return of Bentancur for you being important to the team?
I think it's megally important, hugely important. I was starting to see the Bentancur that we fell in love with before the World Cup, where I did a poll just before the World Cup, well, after we broke for the World Cup, who was Tottenham's best player, and he was it. He smashed it ahead of Kane and everyone at the club. Went on to the World Cup, and he was absolutely superb in those early group stages. And unfortunately, that injury killed him, and it's been a long time coming to start to see the shoots of recovery. And I felt that we were just starting to see that. And I said the only thing that was missing was a goal, which he got. And I think that he is a crucial element. I think when you have Romero and Bentancur together, they have a great understanding, carrying the ball in the transition from defence to attack. And I think we move the ball a lot quicker. For me, Maddison needs too many touches, and some of the midfield need too many touches. I think Bentancur is crucial. What version of Bentancur we're going to get? I'm not so sure. I did not like Maddison's reaction to being taken off. I mean, obviously, people get very upset about going off, but his reaction on the bench, I was looking at him and he was shaking his head and peed off, and Reguilon was trying to console him. It just reminded me of the time he got taken off in the West Ham game you were mentioning before, George. And then we went on to score all those goals and he didn't celebrate one of them. That, for me, is not someone who should be the part of the leadership group. There's something about him that, I want to see Kulu back in that midfield. I want to see him surrounded by Bentancur and either Bissouma or Papassar. Listen, they have some very good players, right? Yates is probably going to be going in there and being down and dirty. You got Callum Hudson-Odoi, who is really good. Murillo, top player, and I like Ola Aino, the winger, and you got someone like James Ward-Prowse, who is struggling to get a game, who always seems to hurt us with a free kick. I hope, Tally, you've got Chris Wood still in your team, because no doubt he'll be crossing it for Chris Wood. And, we're pretty special. We're pretty good at our set pieces.
Triple captain Chris Wood this week. I think it's got to be the way.
And, they've also got the second fastest player in the Premier League with Anthony Elanga, who scored an unbelievably good goal against Brentford on the weekend. I think it's Mickey van der Ven, Anthony Elanga, and then Timo Werner. So I would really like to see Timo start. Sonny needs rested. And, if we're going to give them any threat, I noticed playing with Wista and Mbuemo, they did struggle at times, Forest, to contain them. But they didn't take their chances. You have to finish at dinner. And I think, we will have a chance if we use some of the pace to counteract the pace that they're going to employ on the weekend. But they are a clever team. Nuno, I mean, I used to call him No Clue Nuno. I eat my words because
it just shows you when you've got. It just shows you, with all due respect, when you've said this already, Jay. When you've got a coaching staff and set up around you that are people that you're familiar with, when you're having
Correct.
players walk for you in a system, isn't it funny what a manager does and what they can do?
Well, absolutely. And, if Montgomery left, he'd get some other random guy in, you can do the coaching. I'm going to sit in my office and watch it on the screen because he likes to distance himself from the players. It was great. The last person that I knew who did that was Harry Redknapp. But Harry Redknapp had a team of people that he'd worked with for most of his career in Joe Jordan and
Kevin Bond.
Yeah, Kevin Bond. Yeah.
And also the same 4 players he would take with him everywhere.
And the same 4 players.
Yeah. No, did he take his staff? He took the same players. Exactly. But what I'm saying is, for me, I understand that. I understand that bond. I understand that understanding. And I think it's a really important part of training and understanding that the people you entrust. Look, for example, like if you're in a big business, right, and you're delegating, would you not rather delegate with people you work with for 10, 15, 20 years that know exactly what they're going to do? Or would you just trust someone you just brought in? Oh, he's good. Yeah, okay. What happened with him? Well, he was sacked from his last job. Oh, why? Because he was shit, right? But okay, we'll give him the position. I think we spoke before, Ricky, the guy must be pinching himself.
It's interesting. Look, I mean, there is that point there that, he's given Jedinak an opportunity. And again, there's been points where he has worked with him on a freelance basis. But, again, he's a man that's been very used to, as Johnny has said there, pretty much turning up and giving coaches an opportunity around him and being much the person that turns up and gets on with the job. I mean, I just wonder, guys, I've got a final question to ask everybody as we end this kind of year and we head into the Christmas period. I want to ask that final question. But before we do, let's get predictions on the Forest game. And just to briefly, I'm going to ask you what would be successful for Tottenham in 2025. Before I do, let's just get a prediction around for this game. We'll start with Johnny. Let's start with you, Bud. What are you going to go for?
Well, listen, I'm hoping we're not going to get Christmas stuffing. That would just not be good. It's going to be challenging. It's going to be defensively they're really good.
Just look at their record here. They've won 4 of their last 5. They're a good side, and they've got
I was going to say this earlier, sort of quickly, that I think one player that's been, criminally underrated for Forest, or not really spoken about enough, who's actually sort of there by accident, is Elliot Anderson. I think he has been unbelievable because he has been, I think, with the 3 losses recently that they've had, like the 3 recent losses were when he hasn't been starting or was out injured. And I think what he does well is he covers every basis of that midfield. He's played sort of more deep and defensive. He's played attacking midfield. He's played right midfield when Alanga's not been playing. And he has just been everywhere. He's been driving the ball forward. He's a good dribbler. And I think he is going to be one of the key players that we're going to have to do well against, because we all know that's that sort of area, that number 6 position that we're struggling with. And again, like you were saying before there, Johnny, I think Bentancur's got to be a huge comeback for that game, because he's going to have to deal with him. And I think he can be a problem. And as well as that, I think Spence needs to deal with Hudson-Odoi if we're playing Spence right back in Reston Poro, because his pace is electric. So, I think there's a couple of key players there we need to really be on top of if we want to stand a chance to win that game.
They've also got the other guy. Is it Taiwo Awenu?
Awenu. Huh? Yeah. Taiwo Awenu.
I'm very I'm very big on African names, as you can see. He was on fire last season. Obviously, he hasn't sort of rekindled that. But again, he's another dangerous one to come off the bench. Look, I want to remain positive, although it's very difficult to remain positive. I can positively say I have absolutely zero belief that we're going to keep a clean sheet.
Oh, yeah.
So I think that's safe. So anyone who's got Pedro Porro in their defence, who I've still kept him in there with some blind.
I took him out a while ago. So that's...
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I don't know what I was thinking. I mean, my score would be so much higher if I'd evicted him a long time ago. I think we
have no one left.
I'm going to go.
We'd have no one left.
I'm going to go for. Listen, I captained Mo Salah, so I'm very happy this week.
I couldn't do it.
You couldn't do it.
I should have done
I
my
wish I did. I knew it was going to happen as well, but I couldn't do it. I can't.
Well,
do it.
I did Palmer a couple
Palmer,
weeks ago, so I couldn't do it again. I was like...
I know.
No, I couldn't do it.
It's like an insurance office club, isn't it? You got a guarantee on the other side. Unbelievable.
I'm gonna go 2-2. My heart, my head tells me we're gonna get beat. My heart tells me there's always a possibility of a result, and I'm gonna go 2-2. And I would take a 2-2 right now. I would walk out with a Desmond into the new year. Let's start 2025 on a positive note. And let's be honest, right? If we lose 15 games in 2025, and Big Angie's still there, I'm gonna have issues.
I think. Listen, I can't imagine that would ever be a case where they would allow it to happen. But football's football, right? Jam, I'm gonna come back around to you very, very shortly. We'll go to Tao next. Tao, prediction for this one. Now we've exposed your fantasy football lineups.
I'm going to say 2-1, but I don't know who to. I don't think it will be a draw. I don't think I've ever come on here and said
you've never really predicted draws on it. We don't really do draws under Ange, do we? Much of the time.
No, and I generally don't think I've ever come on here and said we're going to lose. So I don't want to start that now. I also don't want to put that into the atmosphere. I don't think it'll be a particularly high scoring game. I don't think after what we've just seen, I think they're going to have to massively put the brakes on in some way. Also, Forest defence too good for us to score many, and let's hope ours gets better so we don't concede too many. I just think off the back of the other game, they have to do better, and they have to know that and really, really try. So I'm going to go 2-1, but
Talia, you were talking about your atmosphere. Your stadium's empty. There is no atmosphere in your stadium at all. Nothing. It's empty.
I've got no fans.
You got no fans.
I got no fans.
I'm sure you got thousands of them.
2-1 from Tao there. 2-1 from Tao, but not sure either way. George, I think again, from those that are watching this show live, there's a mixture of comments suggesting that this would be a massive, massive win in the predicament Spurs are in with their injury situation, which I will need to remind people that Bantancur is back. But there's always a caveat with Bentancur. The caveat is that if he does get booked, he will be suspended for the next game. Football in terms, right? Just to be very, very clear. So that's where Spurs are in terms of Bentancur, that he's one booking away from another suspension. George, on that basis, what are you going to go for result-wise?
I was just going to go for a 3-2 Spurs win. I mean, you know me, I'm always going to back Spurs. Yeah. But I think it's actually kind of almost the opposite to what Taylor said, to be honest with you. I think as much as we concede a lot of goals, we're the first team to score 3 against Liverpool this season. So we still can score goals against good defences. And as well as that, looking at Forest this season as well, they counter-attack brilliantly, but when they do commit. They commit 5 players to the box now, which is something that they didn't do last year. Last year, it's normally like 1 or 2. And just hoping that the striker scores. So for me, I think a comment said it above as well, the midfield is so important. If you can stop the likes of Anderson, Morgan, Gibbs, White, if you can stop that when they're transitioning and going on the attack, because we all know how attacking we get going forward as well. I think there's a good chance for quite a few goals this game, just despite how good their defense has been this season. So yeah, I'm backing us in a 3-2 win because we sort of have this pattern. I think we tend to bounce back for the Thursday games and generally do okay, and then kind of mess up on the Sunday. So I back us to get a good result in this one. But yeah, Wolves might be another story. We'll see about that one.
I'm also very conscious. Look, we've got Christmas films on the horizon in these next couple of minutes, but we've got to break away from. So the critical question that I want to close it on. Look, it's been a challenging year as Tottenham fans. And look, although, again, we are the league's top goal scorers, we can firmly hold that record aloft. We can. I think, again, we look at the fact of what's been the highs of 2024. I think many would say probably that win away to City is the standout landmark win of 2024. I'm just intrigued to know, because Tal, something you said has really stood with me actually from the start of this show. For you to come on here, and I've known you for so many years, for you to say how sad you are and drained by it, I think is really just a sad and kind of where a lot of Spurs fans feel right now, that I know so many are disconnected. And this is not a case of just a manager. As I've said, it's not a case of just a group of players. It's over a concert or a number of years. So I'm just really intrigued to know what would make you happy for 2025 in terms of, if it's on-pitch success, what would make you happy? We'll start with Johnny. We're going to end with George, and Tal's going to be in the middle there. Johnny, I'm terrified to ask. Johnny, what would make you happy for 2025? It's been, as we know, we took a lot, me and you, off air as well.
Yeah.
It has been a really challenging season, a challenging year so far. And for somebody like you, I want to say this, you go home and away, you give up so much time away from family, friends for this football club. What would make you happy? What would be success in your eyes?
Well, first of all, I like to be cured of Spursitis. It's a disease I've been afflicted with for far too long. What would I like to see in 2025? I'd like to see Arteta fall over, coming out of his box and fall flat on his face. I'm sick of seeing that guy running up and down the flipping touchline and never getting punished.
We need Højbjerg back again to give him a little pushback.
Oh, I never hated Arsene Wenger. I respected him because he was a brilliant coach. Arteta is the most annoying individual. I'd like to see Spurs progress. Look, all I've asked for is the green shoots of recovery. And, after 18 months, I'd like to see progression. I'd like to see players progress. When I look at this squad, I see one player that's progressed over the 18 months, and that's Kula. I don't see progression in many of the other players. I don't believe he's brought the players on. So I'd like to see progression. I'd like to see us moving slowly. I don't expect to go on now and be unbeaten now for the rest of the season. Come January, we got all our players back. But I would like to see progression. I'd like to see some of the players like Jed Spence. I'd like to see Archie Gray play in the middle of the park, given his chance as a 6, because the kid is absolutely incredibly fantastic.
He's been the one player, I think, through this period honestly, that you could just say he's been brilliant. Archie Gray. Feel sorry for him. I feel really sorry for him.
It's weird conceding 6 and saying that he was one of our best players on the pitch.
Yeah,
he was so good.
He was my number one pick last January to be signed. I never thought we would sign him. He hasn't disappointed. I'd like to see us look. As much as I've gone on about Ange, I'd like him to be successful. I've got many negative things to say about him, but I want this club to succeed.
Yeah.
And I'd like Daniel Levy to actually understand the room, read the bloody room, okay, and do something, that these fans care about. Put a statue up of Bill Nicholson. Arsenal have 5-6 statues to Thierry Henry, to Wenger, to Chapman. I can list them all. And I'm a Spurs fan, right? We don't have anything. When I've mentioned this before, when you take your kids to football, there should be something which tells them this is a football club. The kids said, "Who's that, Dad?" Or take your son or your daughter. That's Bill Nicholson. He was the greatest manager in the club's history. Or this is Harry Kane. Or this is things to discuss. This is for the next generation of Spurs fans. I don't want our history cleansed away from us in this in a new stadium, in this multi-purpose arena, which seems to have taken us away from what we are. First and foremost, Tottenham Hotspur Football Club is a football club, and nothing else. So, I would like to see Levy start to make some gestures towards the fans and understand what we're actually talking about. And I think if he did that and he threw us a bone here and there, that some of this anti-Levy rhetoric would die down. So successful squad. Don't need to see that. I like to win something, obviously, but 2025 progression. Levy actually waking up and smelling the coffee and sprinkling some goodwill to our fans, and to see our young players progress.
Jay, thank you so much. Always a pleasure.
Pleasure.
We're going to see you sooner before we know it. We love you very much. Let's go to G. We're going to close on Tao. G, Christmas films on the horizon. Let's squeeze this in. What are we going for? What do we need to see in 2025 for you to make you a happy man? Or can I just say, whenever I'm around you, George, you're always smiling. So it's infectious. We love you for that. And maybe it's because we only get George on the preview show. You don't get him after games. He's always at the games. Maybe that's
you don't
why.
want to see that. You don't want to see that, does it? To be honest, I actually echo a lot of those sentiments. I think for me as well, I want to start seeing a lot more. Well, it's easier said than done. We need to start getting this winning mentality. And I think whilst now we are obviously still in the 4 competitions, at the start of the season, I said, to be honest with you, looking at the competition, Europa League finals are bare minimum. And I can't lie to you, because I think it's a trophy this season tailored for us to do well. And I think obviously we've struggled so far this season to get proper consistency in that competition. But that is something for me I want to see. I want to see us get to that Europa League final. And I feel like there's a lot of talk every week from the players. And to be fair, it's mostly from Kulusevski, and he tends to back it up himself. But there's always talks of, oh, no, we need better mentality in games. Like the Brighton game, oh, we needed a better mentality and this, that, and the other. I think we kind of lose our heads a little bit against quote-unquote lesser opposition, or who they view as lesser opposition. And I just want to see a better mentality than that. I want us to see us start to kill every team, not just fight up against the good ones when it's like United away, City away. So, yeah, I think definitely a better mentality shift, and pretty much echo what Johnny said there.
Gee, thank you so much. I appreciate it. It's a tough period. Look forward to having you back on soon as well. Thank you so much. Always a pleasure. I think it's a case, like I say, when you have, as I always say, these genuine match-going fans that give up so much of their spare time, hard time, with family, friends, you just want to see that success. And Tao is living and breathing of that. Like I say, she was with UG from very, very early days, 7-8 years. So Tao, again, those comments I think will stick with many, because many have known you on the show for many, many years, and see you as somebody I would think that is very balanced in terms of tells it as it is, and it's not one to shy away from where Spurs are. So for you to come out personally and say you're drained, it's sad where they are, what do you need to see as a fan that's going to give you the motivation for the upcoming year for you?
I think first and foremost, I'd love for football to become the priority again, or at least make it feel like that's the thing for us fans. I'm bored of this Squid Games, what the bottleneck or bottle man or whatever's always around the stadium. I don't know what it is, who they're advertising, but there's always something else, and it's not football. So I think that needs to feel like it's the forefront of stuff again for us. Like, that would be great. I think my grounded response is consistency in our performances. I'd love to go to a game and not feel like my heart could give in at any point of time. I think there needs to be a better atmosphere in the stadium. We've not really spoken about that, but we've all said it. The atmosphere is pretty dire a lot of the time. There needs to feel like a better atmosphere around the ground. Progression with those players, again, like the other guys have said. Would love some more reasonable pricing. Jordan put up a cracking comment a minute ago that he needs to lower the ticket prices, because I need some people sat with me in my stadium because it's empty. But yes, more reasonable pricing would be fantastic. And I'd love to say a top 6 finish. And if you are asking for my slightly further from reach things, I'd say some decent signings and a cup. But we can't all be dreaming, right? So, yes, that's my summary.
I've got to say one thing as well quickly on that. I think one thing I think definitely needs improvement. I don't know how we do this, and I'll be open to suggestions, is somehow creating a better atmosphere at the Spurs Stadium, whether it is lowering the prices to get, not necessarily make it a tourist attraction. But I've been heavily disappointed with the home crowds this season, atmosphere wise. So but I don't know what the solution is in that. So
reasonable pricing. If we could have 50 cent at 50 pence, that would be great.
But I also think it's on top of Johnny's comment there as well. The fact that now obviously the likes of CHFC flags, Spurs song sheet, return of the shelf, but the fact they've now distanced themselves away from obviously the club is a big problem, because those are, with all due respect, the organisations that are really trying to bring that feel-good, fan-good factor to the club that Tao talks about. So, look, like I say, we've got Christmas movies on the horizon. We're not going to keep you any much longer. I want to say to all of the viewers and listeners out there, a massive, huge thank you for all of the incredible support, not just this season, this year, but throughout the last 7 and 8. I'm blessed to have had, wonderful panelists that have been with us through this journey a long, long time. Johnny's just getting started. Although, Jay, forgive me, it looks like you might have been here for longer than me.
I feel like I only get invited for the drama and the depression. I'm waiting for a win. I'm waiting to come on here and celebrate, I really am. I mean, I'm only 28. Look at the state of me.
I got to say on this point, the likes of George and Tao that were with us in the early days, 7, 8 years of, when we had, let's be honest about it, when we did start off, those 7, 8 years ago, we had some really amazing heavy heights. I just think, Tao and G, we had points where we couldn't wait to come on and record and be so happy and joyful. And look, it's a testament. Do you remember those, Tao?
I've sunk lower and lower in my seat ever since.
84 years or whatever it is. It's like, yes.
Can I just ask Salia, what's her favourite Christmas movie?
Don't ask me that. That's under pressure.
That's under pressure.
I couldn't decide. That's like choosing between the kids. I don't have I feel like
really? I didn't realise it was that dramatic.
Yeah. No,
so can't I say it's all kicking off behind that stadium? Don't ask. It's all kicking off behind that stadium.
I've got all people waiting to watch a film with me.
We're going to let it go. Listen, I want to say again, just to reiterate that point, thank you so much, guys, for all of the incredible support that you guys have given us through this season and beyond that. Like I say, to have been blessed to be doing this show game after game, week after week. That it wouldn't be possible. I will reiterate this again without the incredible support we've had from the viewers and listeners that have taken this show to places beyond even my imagination. So thanks so much for all the support. You've made us your multi-award-winning podcast now for not of 1 year and 2 years, but beyond that. So thank you so much from the wonderful Georgia Killier, from the brilliant Talia Corran, from the superb Johnny Hammy. Look, we have been the last one on Spurs. Please have a very healthy, happy Christmas. If you're not celebrating Christmas, have a lovely festive break. We'll be back with you very, very soon. But from us all here, please keep safe, keep well. And as always, come on, you Spurs.